Hi everyone, welcome to Art Obsession Studio again, and it's been a little while since my last video. I've been busy with things in life and just trying to manage different things as we all do, and working a little bit on this painting here. But I thought I would do a video about styles because there is a lot of overlap and confusion about what kind of style you paint, what kind of style I paint. Just for fun, I put some of my paintings, images of them, in a AI application that would determine what kind of painting it was, and I was quite surprised to see some of the AI interpretations of my styles. So they went from realist to realist impressionist to well, a couple of other things, yeah, and and I actually agree with a lot of that. However, you're going to hear different opinions, and this is because there are some real fine rules, I guess, out there that were established by curators and other scholars that study art, and they wanted to categorize all forms of art. But I think they've gone a little overboard in their rigidity, and I've even had people troll my channel, nitpicking, whether something was impressionist or not, and really it was because of these rigid parameters, that the impressionists were from France and that they were from the 1800s, the mid 1800s, and but at a very specific time. It's almost like at 12 noon on in 1852 or whatever. It's like that's when it began, and then we have to end it immediately. At in 1870 or whatever the heck it is. And then it's something else. It becomes post-impressionist or then later modernist. So I think what I'm gonna, right after this little intro, we're gonna just shoot a quick. There's a quick little video I have where I visited the Victoria Art Gallery, and it just so happened to I scan across Emily Carr, Casson, I think is Casson. I've never really known the pronunciation of his name, but very striking images. I believe he's one of the group of seven, Casson or Casson. And anyway, he's a modernist, but he could also be referred to as an impressionist or maybe a post-impressionist. So, but in just general terms, don't try not to get too bogged down in these descriptors. A modernist painting, faux art, fauxism, I guess it's called, which is, some of Emily Carr's stuff, but then Emily Carr transitions even towards, well, Impressionism. She travels through that. There's some elements of Impressionism for sure in what she does. And then I think she ends up at some point even with Cubism and some other stylist or styletic or whatever the word types of approaches, stylized, I guess is what you would say. And then there's, after that, impressionist, post-impressionist, modernist, and then we come to the representative or representational art and contemporary art. And so that those are a little different, the representational or the realism. You might find yourself in that realm. So anyway, we'll just get right to this quick little shot of the Victoria Art Gallery, and then we'll continue after that.
Here we go. So it's Alfred Casson.
Emily Carr.
And that's it right there, I believe. And he was a member of the group of seven. So correction, it wasn't Casson, it's Casson.
Levi Jackson, Northern Lights.
In these images, I'm just panning and muttering out the names of the artists.
Jackson right there. I love it.
There's the Emily Carr, the fauxism. Very stylized. Like that.
Jack McDonald. Frederick Varley. More Emily Carr. Oil on paper. Lauren Harris. An old group of 7. Yeah, again, just going back to this Alfred Caisson. Look at that, those clouds, you can feel them. That's really good feeling on the rocks. Love it. Beautiful stuff. The Victoria Art Gallery. Joe Plaskett. Nice. Holy Lamb. Modernist contemporary, I would think somewhere in there. Very impactful. Right, mid-century modern. Okay, we've had a look at the art gallery. You've seen some of the group of 7 in there. The A.Y. Jackson, who's also published in some Canadian Impressionist journals. But again, he would have been more accurately described, I guess, by the powers that be as a modernist or post-impressionist. Or even representationalist, I suppose, to a degree, right? Because that art has evolved quite a bit today. There's modern, like meaning current, artwork being produced that's very much in that sort of style. So what style are you? So I would not get too carried away with all these really, really tight descriptors. In quite basic, loose terms, Impressionism is what it says. It gives the impression of a real image. We're looking at people with a background. There's a real focus on color. There's a real, it's soft usually. We don't go for real hard descriptive lines and drawings and images. We don't go for hyper-realism or photorealism. We're just trying to create the impression of what the artist sees. And sometimes the colors can be improvised. It can present itself in pointillism, which is lots of little dots of color to create the painting. And I think that in a nutshell, that is what you should consider Impressionism. And don't pin yourself down, well, gee, I wasn't in France in 1867 at 12 noon under the Eiffel Tower, so I guess I don't qualify. It's like, just focus on what you're doing. Then you're modernist, I guess, is if you're somewhere in that group of 7 type of thing. I would still call yourself impressionist if you paint like Van Gogh, who's considered post-impressionist, has these bold lines around everything. I would still consider that impressionism because it's impressionistic by nature. then we really, you could just think of it like that. And then realism, if it's impressionist realism, you're thinking like John Sargent, who the paintings are almost photographic, but if you look at them, the brushstrokes are obvious. But and that's kind of what I strive for, I guess, in some of my style, although I wander around a little bit, and sometimes I'm just completely impressionist or post-impressionist. But again, trying not to get too bogged down, right? So this would be considered here what I would consider to be realist impressionism, or impressionist realism, whichever way you want to phrase it. That's kind of what that is. There's the detail in here is not photographic. The brushstrokes are bold, and I'm going to leave it like that. There's other work that I have to do here, which I will get to in a few moments after this video to get to some conclusion. But that's kind of what I do. What I'd like to talk about, though, is the people that are painting what I would call representational art, and but very creative with color and stuff like this, and it's a very interesting style. So that might be possibly what you're doing, and keep at it. It's a lot of fun. Surrealism is when it's very dreamlike, but there's realism in there, so it's surreal, meaning it's realistic image, but it's an unrealistic or surreal kind of occurrence. It's like dreamlike fantasy. We have the melting clocks of Salvador Dali. The clocks are very real, but melting, not so much, more dreamlike. And things like that. You can do that type of artwork with the assistance of some models. If you want to include people in there, you can pose them in costume. Take some pictures for reference so that you don't bore them to tears, hours and hours and hours of posing for you. You can just take a picture in various positions, and then you can use that as a reference to guide you in your painting, and then incorporate some other images in there. So it's a way for you to really get creative. These are the most creative forms of art, by the way. These are more craft, I think, whereas when we look at surrealism and when we look at contemporary art and abstract art, I think we're really looking at some real creative approaches to art. So if you're very creative and you're inventive, that's probably the styles that you're gravitating towards. What we would call expressionism, right? Because it's very expressive. Contemporary art, abstract art. These are the I think some of the most creative styles, and then you're not pinned down to any one particular style. That's the other nice thing about them too, is that you can approach the canvas or the panel or the cloth or whatever you're painting on. You approach it the way you want, with whatever medium you want, and you can mix medium, and you can do anything you want, as you're completely liberated. And no one can really pin you down to anything and say that's not really consistent with a particular approach. It'll be your own approach. As long as you're consistent and you can show mastery in that approach, then that becomes your style. So don't let things get you hung up too much, and to a point where you're not even able to describe your own art because you're afraid that you might misspeak and say something that's not right, like I'm an impressionist, and then someone challenges you and says, well, this isn't the 1800s and you're not in France. So, you can be an impressionist in the year 2025. Not a problem. It's very easy to do, and you can be an impressionist with your own approach. You can paint impressionistically. And you can follow the modernists and from the last century, 1920s to 30s, I believe, and you can follow them if you like. You can be representational if you like. You can blend all of those together and then just call yourself Impressionist Realism, or even to the degree of being expressionist by just taking it away from realism. And then there are those that paint photorealistically or hyper-realistically, so they want to be exactly like a photograph. So anyway, there you have it. Those are the styles. So hopefully that helps you, guides you along. What are your styles going to be? I would suggest try each of the ones. Find some examples of these various styles and actually try them and see how you feel emotionally too while you're working. And then if there's something that really turns you on, you have to do it. Stick with it. This, by the way, is something that I like doing a lot, but I'm not extremely passionate about painting like this. I actually feel a lot more emotionally charged when I'm painting impressionistically. And I think for me, my evolution in painting is going to take me into a more almost surrealistic, almost surreal impressionism or expressionism. I think that's where I'm probably going to end up, but who knows? It's a journey, and we're all on that journey, and there are no rules. So throw the rule book out and don't let people troll you and pin you down to precise, 2 o'clock in the afternoon in 1933, you cease being a modernist and you must now become a contemporary artist, or whatever the case might be. Ignore all of that. It's rubbish. Let the curators use those labels and those categories to figure out what we're doing. Let them worry about that, and then they can hang it on the wall and call it what they like. But for us, with the paintbrushes in our hand, just paint. If you like the video, click the like button, that's the thumb. Please hit subscribe. It helps the channel. More people can view it and get some of the insight into art. Thank you. Bye.